Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations, where we talk with key spokespeople in the logistics industry about topical issues. Hosted by Peter Macleod, editor of Logistics Business Magazine.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to the latest edition of the Logistics Business Conversations podcast, brought to you today by Ocado Intelligent Automation. My name is Peter Macleod, editor of Logistics Business Magazine, and as always, it's my great pleasure to host this conversation. Now, I'm joined today by Andy Ingram-Tedd. He's Vice President of Advanced Technology for Ocado Intelligent Automation. Hi, Andy, and welcome to this edition of Logistics Business Conversations.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure. Now, Andy, Ocado Intelligent Automation's backstory is vastly different to many of the tech companies I usually write about in Logistics Business Magazine. Many of us would know that Ocado started life as a home delivery partner. So maybe you could fill me in and the listener a little bit on the matter of how did you get from that to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So Ocado started over 20 years ago in the UK as the first pure play online grocery company. Today, we're an international solutions provider of warehouse automation. I mean, that journey was a long one. It was no walk in the park. It was more like a marathon through a maze. And along the way, we learned lots of valuable lessons that shape the automation that we have today. So if we go all the way back to when we first started, the warehouse went live just north of London in England in 2002. And the internet was the new emerging technology at the time. We had this vast warehouse full of racking and shelves. We had a two-stage pick and pack process. We invested about $15 million in what's called a monorail system, something similar to what you might see in a car manufacturing plant, where it would snake around the building with these giant metal apertures on with like pigeonholes. And our operatives would pick items from racking, place them into the pigeonholes. The train would snake around the building till it got to what we called the train station on the ground floor, where it was unloaded by fork truck and then placed in front of a person where they would pack the items into a container ready to load into the back of a van for the shopper. Now, this wasn't quite the mousetrap we needed at the time, and we learned fast. We failed fast, rather, big time. And so we made the bold decision to rip that out completely and start again to turn failure into progress.
Well, Andy, that takes me right back to, the early days of e-fulfillment. I think businesses were still trying to work out how the heck to best serve their customer, and, different models and different varieties of fulfillment models were floating around at that time. So you had a go, didn't quite get it right first time. Where did you go? Where did you start looking after that?
Yeah, so now let's go to 2004. We've ripped out the monorail system. We now start to implement and install massive conveyor systems and shuttle systems. So all of the usual suspects that you've seen around the world before. We had, I think, the largest, most conveyed warehouse in the UK with nearly 30 kilometres of conveyor. That's more conveyor than Heathrow Terminal 5. So this is now our second attempt at purchasing lots of third-party MHE, and it's all stitched together with software at the PLC level, the WCS level, and WS level. And we experienced massive growth between 2004 and 2008. And what we realised is we weren't quite getting the throughput through these systems. And so what we actually did is we ripped out the software and we put our own layers on. We put our own PLC, our own WCMS, and we made it all talk to each other via our WMS. And so we had zone pick aisles, we had goods to person stations, we had tote buffers, and all of these things, are very many single points of failure. If we had a conveyor belt snap, it could take half an hour to fix it, and that would have a 4-hour downtime on your operation. Or we had this thing called a shoe sorter, which processed 7,200 totes an hour. And if that thing stopped, your whole operation was broken. When the day shift came in at the start of their shift and you had this problem at night, they'd be behind before they even started. So our big lesson during this time was that everything breaks. Okay? And anyone that's got any kind of automation in their warehouse will know exactly what this means. And redundancy in a point-to-point system is very costly. So what we really needed is a fault-tolerant system.
Okay, so that's 0 out of 2 so far, Andy. Where do we jump next? You've brought in these huge conveyor-based systems. They're not really providing you with the reliability and the repeatability that you need, or your customers are demanding, even ever more demanding. So what was the next stage for Ocado then?
Yeah, I have to say that although they weren't quite right, we do run one today very successfully in the UK. It does cost a lot of money to build, and it does cost a lot of money to run. And so really we needed to improve on that. So let's fast forward now to 2016. We decided to design and build our own proprietary technology. It's called the Ocado Storage and Retrieval System. And we went live with our first generation in the UK in 2016. One thing really that differentiates us from others is we are the operators of our own equipment as well. And so we actually run the warehouse, and now we are designing components to go into the warehouse, all the automation. So for anyone that's ever had a chance to come and visit one of our warehouse, it really is quite spectacular. What you'll see is a warehouse absolutely filled with storage containers stacked to the ceiling. And on the top of that, a metal grid structure. And on the top of that, these bots that look like washing machines, and they can move like rooks on a chessboard. And any bot can pick up any tote from any location and take it to any process station. So we've no longer got any single points of failure. Two key features about this system that we developed. One was that we have a single space bot, which means only one bot occupies one grid cell. So you can get a lot of bots on the same system and get incredibly high throughput. And the other thing, which is really unique, and I'll just try to explain this for the listeners, inside this one storage and retrieval system, it's not just stock that we're storing. It's also the customer's order. Now, that customer order might be in a plastic container, or it might be in a cardboard box. But that is also inside one of our storage assets inside the grid. So now we've got these two types of things inside the grid. We've got stock and we've got customer assets. And that's where we do all of our order completion. So from the old systems we used to have, where we've got all these different systems, from the inbound systems to the storage, to the retrieval, to the sequencing and the buffering, it's now all in just one system. So it's massively simplified. And we've finally got our fault-tolerant system. There's lots of really smart things we do to ensure that if anything does break, the system can keep going. Because when Mrs. Jones orders her shopping from us, she wants it on time and in full. And if she doesn't get that, she just simply doesn't shop with us again.
Okay, Andy, so now you're in charge of your own destiny. If you want to do it right, do it yourself, I guess. With this incredibly advanced technology at your fingertips now, how can you ensure that everything works exactly as you want it to work, Andy?
Sure. So one of the big lessons we learned during this time is that simulation and data are the keys to unlock performance. So actually back in 2008, and one of the reasons we were able to get so much more output from our conveyor-based systems is because we decided to design our own discrete event simulations. So these are models that we can put all the facts and the figures and the speeds and the rates of all the equipment we've got, model how it's going to behave, what's going to happen, for example, during Wimbledon when everybody decides to order strawberries, and does that break your system? Did you have enough pick stations? So we use that capability to design these new cubic-based storage and retrieval systems. We literally model and simulate thousands of examples before we commit to build the real thing. Like, how high should they be? How many bots should we have? Where should the stations be? Even to the point, what should the station look like? There are lots and lots of goods-to-person stations available, and we've used them over the years. And typically we get rates somewhere between 250 to 350 items per person per hour on a station. That's a lot of dwell time between items. People can go actually much faster than that. So we were able to use this to design even higher speed stations, producing up to nearly 900 items per hour per person. And so we use this simulation, we model everything, we decide how it's going to look, and then we commit, and then we build it.
Okay, right. We've got control of our own design and control of our own system here, but that's only really for Ocado in the UK. So when did it go global, and when did it start spilling out into other customers?
So in 2017, that's when our global adventure started. Some of the biggest and most innovative groceries around the world have seen what we're doing in the UK, and they've decided to partner with us, and they've chosen our automation as their preferred e-com solution. So right now, we're in over 26 live sites around the world. We pick across those 26 sites over 2 billion items every year. And therefore, some of the biggest groceries you've heard of, like Kroger in the US, Sobeys in Canada, Casino in France, Alcampo in Spain, ICA in Sweden, Auchan in Poland, Lotte in South Korea, Aeon in Japan, and Coles in Australia. So we've had to adapt our technology to work in these different territories. And we have actually our own engineers on each of these sites. So every single time we learn something new about our technology on one of these sites, actually everybody gets the benefit. So yeah, we're now a global player. And it turns out that if you can solve grocery profitably, you've got a fantastic system for other verticals. So that's when actually the Ocado Intelligent Automation part of the Ocado Group business started. It's the arm of Ocado which now provides warehouse automation solutions to everybody else around the world that's not e-com grocery.
So effectively, your customers are not competing with Ocado.
Correct. Actually, really interesting. In the UK, many people probably don't know this, but we have a partnership agreement with Morrison's. And so if you are a Morrison's customer in the UK, you shop on an Ocado website, your items are picked and packed from an Ocado warehouse. It's delivered in a Ocado van with an Ocado driver. And if there's any challenges afterwards, you're phoning up an Ocado call center. So the whole thing actually is Ocado. And of course, Marks and Spencer's in the UK didn't have an online presence. And so Marks and Spencer's jointly own 50-50 with the Ocado Group now, the Ocado.com supermarket in the UK. And so now they can range all of their items as well as all of the Ocado branded and all the other items that we stock in the UK.
Brilliant. That was really good. So how is intelligent automation shifting the logistics landscape, Andy? And what does next-gen fulfillment really mean in practice?
Yeah, I'll give you one example. So our robots that you've seen in our warehouse, we've got over 14,000 of them worldwide. Collectively, they will travel 150 million kilometers every year. That's the distance between here and the sun. And when you've got a vehicle like that traveling so far, you really want it to be lightweight and energy efficient. And so in terms of next gen, we're actually harnessing technologies like additive manufacturing. Our new generation bots are about 4 times lighter than the old generation because we were able to design them and build them by 3D printing all the parts. So something like you might find in the aerospace industry for years, where parts are being designed using something called topology optimization to reduce material where it doesn't need to be and ending up with something, components that are quite organic in look. Those typically can't be injection molded or cast like you would typically have. But instead, with the technology that's available to us now, we can actually 3D print them and get these incredibly strong components, but actually super lightweight. And the whole thing is just making the bot lighter, which means smaller motors, smaller batteries, less energy consumption, the grid structure that it sits on. So yeah, when we say next gen, we really mean big step changes. Of course, we'll talk a bit about lights out and what's happening with labour probably later. And everyone's trying to do the same thing. The next big thing that I think everyone's going to be looking after is the OPEX cost, especially like the electricity to actually run these vastly automated warehouses.
So one of the greatest compliments I can pay Ocado Intelligent Automation is when I see your bots, I think Formula One, they're pared down. You've taken out anything that's not necessary there. So, for example, a third-party supplier might have casing when there's a branding all over it. You've done away with all of that. It's literally the bot and nothing else.
Yeah, I think most people, when they see our bots for the first time, they refer to them as naked bots, and they ask, "Where's the cladding?" And the truth is, you don't really need that cladding. I think a lot of companies that we've bought from before, they do have these very nice, shiny-looking, robots. But actually, when you run the business yourself and you really learn what's important, that cladding, for example, it just adds weight, unnecessary weight. It adds an extra component that our engineers need to remove before they service and maintain the bots. And actually, they don't really keep any dust or debris or dirt from the robot. The robot's designed, is IP rated to survive in the kind of warehouse environment where you'd expect to see, dust particles. So, yeah.
If I told my wife I was going to be doing a podcast about naked bots, I'm sure she wouldn't let me. So coming around to looking at the grid, around which quite a lot of your technology is based, there are very many approaches to this. Some have the bots climbing up the racking. Some have shuttles sort of working within the racking themselves. You've gone for the bots on top, and it's obviously a very, very efficient solution. it has to be scalable, I guess. And so how else is it sort of highly suitable to today's modern warehouse challenges?
Over the last 20 years, we've learned a lot. And actually, some of these systems you talk about, we used to own ourselves and operate. And it was really our simulation capability that we built in-house that enabled us to analyze these systems, all of these types of systems, for our use case. And all of these different systems have their own specialties, but why did we decide to end up in a cubic-based system? Well, for our needs, for super high throughput, for no single points of failure, it was just the best choice. They fill the warehouse quite nicely. So in terms of volumetric space and utilization, they work really well. In terms of simplicity, where everything's connected, they work really well. And in terms of modularity, so we can really build these things in any shape and size we like, and add our inbound stations nearby where the inbound bays are, and have our outbound stations where the outbound bays are, and actually start to optimize it for the layout and the shape of the warehouse. So we can design the whole warehouse to be optimized, and the system then can match it.
Andy, when I think of warehouse automation, it always feels to me like a bit of a compromise. You've got speed, accuracy, you've got the complexity of all the SKUs as well, but you also can't sacrifice flexibility. So how does your tech help companies meet those sort of expectations for all those measures?
Yeah, so consumers expect rapid delivery. They expect their items in full and in full and on time, like we discussed before. And so let's talk about picking, which represents, nearly 50% of all labor in warehouses. Everyone needs to do this picking task. We've been developing robotics for years, and we actually acquired a company a couple of years ago called Kindred AI, which really has helped us now advance our robotic capability. And so previously we would have people, operatives, standing at stations designed for humans, so all the ergonomics, and we would have our robots deliver the stock to the person, the operative, and also the customer asset to do order completion. We've got rid of all of that now. It's becoming harder and harder to recruit those people to do these tasks, to pick all day and to do it accurately as well. So now we've taken our robotic technology, but instead of just replacing the human, we put the robot directly on top of our grid system. This is a very different way of doing it compared to how other people are doing it. It simplifies the whole thing. It allows for maximum flexibility, like we talked about our modular system before. And all of the order completion now is done on top of that grid.
So in warehouse automation, you've got conflicting flows. You've got upstream, downstream. You've got the inventory coming in. You've got the orders going out. How do you integrate all those processes? And I'm thinking of your rooks moving across the top of the grid, and thinking possibly if one of them was a knight as well, maybe to sort of jump around a little bit. But of course, that's just fantasy. So how do you actually overcome these parallel challenges?
Yeah, well, the system really is all connected together. Okay, so let's talk about the customer journey as an example, and how the inventory at one end is connected to the middle bit with the storage and the sequencing is connected to the end bit where they get it delivered. So a customer would first of all place their order, and they decide which 1 hour time slot they want. When they place that order, they're actually ordering from live inventory. So because we have a captive system, and because we have fantastic inbound processes and trusted suppliers, it means that we're very confident on what stock we've got in the system. So our customers are actually ordering from live inventory. And once that, for example, that bottle of champagne has been ordered, that's allocated and won't be allocated to anybody else. So that's the first step. That really reduces the number of substitutions, because we know if we're either out of stock or not of it. And then in terms of the last mile and the routing, it's really one of Ocado's most sophisticated systems that rarely gets talked about. So in the UK alone, we deliver to up to 500,000 households each week. And every week they're slightly different. Some are in blocks of flats, some are in central London, some are in the middle of the countryside. And then there's weather conditions to deal with and road closures to deal with. We also allow our customers, if we go back to the inventory side again, to change their order at the last minute. And even if they do change their order at the last minute, which then generates a larger order size, which means it wasn't quite going to fit in that original van, it gets rerouted onto a new van. And so the whole thing is connected, which is seamless for the customer. But in the background, I think someone told me it was 3 trillion calculations a second it's doing every second of the day, making sure that the right items get to the right customer at the right time, even with all these changes. And actually, in terms of, go back to the flexibility point, now that we've got all of this data and we understand what customers want and we understand what our system's capable of, our customers now can place orders the same day and get it delivered because there's a space that we left available in the van because we knew that was going to happen.
So we touched on it earlier, Andy, labour challenges. It's hard to recruit, hard to retain staff. Humans will always have a part to play, surely, in the warehouse of today and the warehouse of the future. So how does that work with Ocado IA and your designs for automation?
Yeah, often when we talk about robots, there's always the question of what's happening to the humans. So in all my time, and I've been at Ocado from day one, we've always been recruiting more people in the warehouse more than ever, and that number just keeps going up. And we've been developing robotics and increasing our engineering teams. And so I don't think there's any danger of losing any people just yet. And what it is really enabling us to do is, for the warehouse, give people more interesting jobs. So before, there might have been one person, let's say, on a decant station receiving goods all day. And we might need, 10 or so people across 10 stations, one per station. But with new automation coming in, we can now upskill that person to manage a fleet of robots that's doing that same job. So now, one person is doing the job of 10 people. Meanwhile, we're upskilling even more of our people to do interesting engineering jobs, actually designing the robots or maintaining the robots. So there's definitely a space for people. And in all my time, that number's just been increasing all the time.
Taking the first steps into automation can be quite a tricky decision to make, and core businesses that perhaps haven't taken that yet, who are somewhat cautious about it. So if a business wants to adopt this intelligent automation in phases, what's the sort of a realistic rollout program that you can hold their hand through?
Yeah, I mean, the technology that we've developed really is ultra scalable and modular. So let me just give you an example. Our largest site in the UK has about 800,000 storage bins and about 3,500 robots, picking, packing and moving these storage bins around. Our smallest site is also in London, which consists of about only 10,000 storage bins. So two very, very different sizes. All of it is the exact same technology. And what's really great about this technology is you can really start small. You can build a bit of it, you can go live, and without any impact to your operation, we can actually add and scale up, add more robots, add more pick stations, add more grid. In terms of starting really small, the technology we've talked about today, the grid, the robots on the top, that's not for everybody. And so Ocado actually had a gap in their portfolio, and a company called Six Rivers System, who design and build an AMR called Chuck, was available on the market. So we decided to acquire it. And now it's part of the Ocado Intelligent Automation product portfolio. And it's a cart that's designed to improve cart pick operations by up to 250% without changing any of your infrastructure, with all smart technology to integrate it into your existing warehouse. And so we have that as well. So some of our customers now, if they really want to start small, they can start with Chuck, and then they can build up to the bigger, more automated systems like the Ocado storage and retrieval system later.
So say a system is being implemented, sometimes it's easy to focus on the day-to-day business and maybe not take a step back and evaluate exactly, whether the implementation has been successful in terms of optimizing the operations. So when you want to evaluate the success of this, of an automized system, what sort of KPIs or performance metrics should businesses focus on?
Yeah, I mean, businesses are, all doing the same thing. They're focusing on operational efficiency, so throughput rates, order cycle times, system uptime, availability. Accuracy and quality is super important. So pick accuracy rate, order fulfill rate, error rates. Labor efficiency is super important. So units picked per hour, headcount, training time. And I would say, look at the total cost of ownership. Look at absolutely everything factored in. I think sometimes people just focus on one thing, and that might help them choose one particular system. But actually, when you select your automation, it's not just the initial cost of purchasing, it's not just the initial CapEx cost, it's then the cost of running it, it's the cost of using it, it's the cost of, and is it going to allow you to grow as a business in the way that you want, with more volumes coming in the future? So there really is a lot of different things to look at. When we've designed our system, we've really been the users of our own system. So these are all KPIs that are important to us. So we've factored them in when designing this new modular and scalable system.
Andy, it's been interesting you talking us through the sort of from the pioneering days to where we are today, which is a somewhat more mature market for warehouse automation. I'm going to get you to get your crystal ball out now, if you don't mind, if you could just polish that off for me. And I'm going to ask you, where do you think automation in logistics is heading? And then an answer that you probably don't need your crystal ball for. How is Ocado positioning itself for what's next?
Yeah, so that would be the question that now all the lawyers in Ocado would be listening very careful with my answer. I actually have a second role, and I head up the emerging technology division in Ocado, where we are looking at what the new technologies are and how to use that. We are always forward thinking. We always have been in what these technologies are for the future and how we're going to utilize them in a warehouse. It's a really interesting space. And one of the things I would say that everybody is looking forward to for the future is this lights out warehouse. Where is this lights out warehouse that we've been talking about over the years? And we're certainly working on that. It's super, super hard, but I will tell you one thing just to give you an insight on the type of company that Ocado is. We've talked earlier about this additive manufacturing, this technology where we're able to 3D print our own robots, which is amazing. But actually, that was last year's technology. Some of the technology that's coming for the future is amazing. If any of our listeners watch Star Trek, they'll all know what a replicator is, and this type of technology is coming. There's a piece of kit actually developed by a company called Inkbit, which is a new type of additive manufacturing machine. And Ocado actually invest in that company and hold a board position on that company. And because this is the type of technology that's coming, that's going to allow us to not just print one single part, but print entire sub-assemblies in one go. It's quite exciting, and it's just one example of how Ocado are kind of forward-thinking and always trying to stay ahead with the latest technology. So yeah, I'd say watch this space for what's coming next.
Well, I look forward to the moment when you could teleport a customer's order from your warehouse to their front door. Now that would be something, probably put quite a lot of us out of a job. Andy, it's been terrific having this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for talking to me and the listener today about Ocado Intelligent Automation and what is, I was going to say leading edge technology. It sounds a little bit more than that. I can't quite find the words to describe what the one after that is meant to be. But you're driving Ocado ever deeper into the intralogistics sector, and I'm as eager as the next man to find out exactly where that journey is going to take us. And I want to also thank you, our listener, for joining us today for this edition of Logistics Business Conversations. And remember, wherever you get your podcasts from, please subscribe to Logistics Business Conversations to make sure the next edition is delivered straight to you as soon as it's released. Until then, it's goodbye from Andy.
Goodbye, listeners.
And it's goodbye from me, Peter Macleod. Goodbye.